novel here, and today I'm going to be talking about An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. This is the first novel in a fantasy series that basically deals with this place called the Empire, which is run by marshals, or this military force that is run then by this group called masks, which are basically these assassins that carry out the Empire's duties of going and enslaving this other group called the Scholars, which are basically people who used to have a lot of information that were great with art and literature and sciences and things of that nature. But the marshals decide that that's not really needed, so they decide to try to wipe out and then enslave the scholars in order to have a complete martial law over the course of the empire. From what I know of this story, basically it's supposed to be in a Roman-esque kind of scenario, but it's not placed in Rome. If anything, based on the audiobook dialect and the language that was spoken from the characters, it seems to be in a more kind of United Kingdom area, like England or Ireland or even Scotland maybe, and because it's very much a blend of English and Scottish and Irish languages, and so that's kind of more where I think it's going to be, but I don't really know. So to basically kick off this plot of the story, we follow two main characters, the first being a girl named Laia. Laia is a scholar, and unfortunately for her, her family is killed and her older brother is sent to prison for treason. And in order to try to save him and bring him back to her, she decides that she has to join this group called the Resistance, who are hell-bent on taking down the Empire and become a spy for them in order for them to save her brother. Then we have another character named Elias, who is actually a mask in training at this school called Blackcliff. Blackcliff essentially takes children at the age of 6 and trains them to become deadly assassins called masks, and they are to serve the Empire for their entire life. Elias is actually the son of a powerful military leader called the Commandant, and he is the best military prodigy that they absolutely have. He is incredibly skilled in combat and is really a great guy in general, but he is with this bad group of people and he doesn't want to be. If anything in this story, he absolutely resents the idea of being a mask and wants to try and escape, but not before he is told that he has to be a part of what is called the Trials, which essentially is kind of like the Hunger Games in a sense, but essentially he has to fight 3 other people in order to try to become the emperor of the entire empire, and he's not really thrilled about that, especially since he has to go against his best friend, Helene. These two characters, both Laia and Elias, come together in this place when Laia is sent to be a spy at Blackcliff, and she is sent to be a slave to the Commandant, and therefore meets Elias at some point, and their paths kind of cross, but it's not super clear how those are going to cross until probably about a good 50-60% of the book, which I really liked. I think that this novel's plot and intrigue was really well developed. I think it definitely had some slow points, but that's because there is a lot of build-up in terms of talking about the politics and the world building, because this is the first novel of a series, and so there's a lot that has to be done within this first novel in terms of world building and politics building, but I thought it was really well done, and I truly enjoyed it. I think that it was so gripping and action-packed throughout the whole story that kept me going and made it really impressive to me, because I was so thrown off by all of the gore and the action, and it wasn't gore to where I was uncomfortable. It was just there's a lot of death and violence that really kind of was in this world that really kind of made it more intriguing to me for some reason. I don't really know quite how to explain it. Going into the characters though, I really truly loved both Elias and Laia, and I loved Helene, and I loved a lot of the smaller characters. I actually was loving the bad guys too in this book, because I think the thing with Ember in the Ashes is that Sabaa Tahir was able to let you understand kind of every angle of the story by looking at different characters and their interactions with both Laia and Elias, and they all became so interesting to me. Like, I don't think I've ever been interested in bad guys before until this novel, or not to the level that I was interested with in this book specifically. I think that really Sabaa Tahir did a wonderful job of making you almost empathize with some of the bad guys in this story, because there's a lot of secrets that are divulged and a lot of things that are being done that are deceptive, and just so many things pop up in this novel that make you really want to know each individual character, no matter how small they are. And I think that there's still going to be a lot of characters in the next book and in the third and the fourth book coming out that are going to really push that a lot more and make you really root for some of the smaller characters that you probably would never have noticed in any other fantasy story similar to this. The writing style is also really well done. I was really impressed with how Sabaa Tahir writes, because she gives both Laya and Elias completely different voices, and the writing styles are so different compared to between the two. It's almost as if this was co-authored, where Sabaa wrote one character and somebody else wrote the other, but that's purely because they were so distinctly different, and I loved that so much. I think that it really made for a lot more interesting plot development and story continuation. I think that it really drove the story forward by having such distinct voices between these two characters. And I have to say, my most favorite part of this entire book is that nothing is insta-love within this story. The romantic interests within this story are either making sense or they are developing, and they're questioned throughout their development, because there is one sense of the story that could seem very insta-lovey, but both of the characters are really unsure of why it is happening and why they have feelings for this person, and I absolutely love it, because I hate insta-love stories where there is no reasoning or there is no questioning of the sudden romantic interest in a person, and it makes it so unrealistic to me. But I really enjoyed how Sabaa Tahir avoided that by making sure both of her characters that were involved in these relationships that seemed to be insta-lovey were questioning every single aspect of it, and I just loved it. It was so great. So if you can't tell by how much I've been ranting and raving about this book, I ended up giving An Ember in the Ashes a 5 out of 5 stars. I am so excited now to read A Torch Against the Night and then A Reaper at the Gates when it comes out in June, because I love these characters so much. I love this world. So thank you guys so much for joining me in this review of An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I know it's a lot of me just ranting and raving about the story, but I really found no flaws within it. I didn't really think that there was anything wrong with it that was glaring. I think that it was honestly a great explosive start to this fantasy series that I cannot wait to continue reading into, and I think the characters were all so well developed despite it being one book so far, and that each individual character is so interesting that it makes you want to continue to know more about them and see how they're going to play in later in the story. So if you guys did enjoy this video though, please do give it a big thumbs up, and let me know if you've read An Ember in the Ashes or the rest of the books in the series and what you think of them. Let me know if you thought that Torch Against the Night was just as good or if it was even better. I would love to know. And if you're not already and you'd like to be, hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys.